CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.
Hi, this is Josh Reed, Sports Director at WIVB Channel 4 in Buffalo, and you are listening to the Tim Graham and Friends podcast.
What are you doing?
Tim's been bothering me to do this thing for his podcast. Sorry. I gotta stop this, I guess.
Welcome to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus, wearing his pink yet again. Men Wear Pink. That's the campaign to raise money for cancer research and awareness. And Jonah, how's it been going for you? From what I understand, or last I checked, you were doing very well in the quasi competition that is the Pinksters.
Oh yeah, rather well. I was second on the leaderboard for many of the weeks through October and have since fallen to fourth.
And the leaderboard is for Western New York, or what's the?
Yeah, for the 20 ambassadors we have here doing the Men Wear Pink campaign in Western New York. But my donations and the money we raised at some of these bartending events have been coming along at a rather good pace. But some of these other ambassadors have stepped up and surpassed me on the leaderboard. So hopefully listeners to this podcast can maybe chip in and get me back up there.
Well, we're going to get to the Buffalo Bills and their game against the Tennessee Titans on Sunday, the Amari Cooper trade, whatever there is else to talk about. There's plenty. The defense, Tyler Bass, Josh Allen continuing his MVP bid. The Sabres, of course, 1-4-1. We're going to talk plenty about that. UB football. But I want to ask you, let's stay with the Men Wear Pink real quick. You do have some functions coming up, and I was talking to John Scott about this. We were at the airport coming back from the Jets game Tuesday morning, and he was talking about how much work this is, that you don't just get into it and I guess you can kind of coast and, try to raise a couple bucks here or there, but there's a lot of work involved with this. What's it been like from that side for you?
It is a bit of work, a bit of effort, kind of reaching out to your personal network, wearing pink every day. Not that that's that difficult, but it takes a little bit of planning and purchasing clothing. I didn't own this many pink shirts before this month. And then you got to curate your online image, take some pictures, put that out there and use that in a way that solicits some donations. But I've enjoyed it. It hasn't felt like hard work. It's felt a bit more like kind of a fun campaign of raising awareness and emphasizing some of the importance of all of the different breast cancer campaigns and programs and platforms. Roswell Park, I did some videos with Jackie Walker earlier this month that were for a different breast cancer program at Roswell Park, and I'm doing a fitness related fundraiser tomorrow for something called the Breast Cancer Network. That's not part of Men Wear Pink, but hopefully I get some cool pictures that maybe I can post. But yeah, it's not something where you just sign up. You could do it that way. I mean, I know there's people that maybe if you're on television and you just wear the pink outfits and that's pretty much all you do. But it does take, in order to do this well and do this right, it does take fundraising. It's a bit like the boots on the ground, grassroots campaigning that's involved in politics this time of year. That's necessary to really maximize the donations and reaching out to as many people you know. And then the bartending events, we have one more this Wednesday at Sports City Pizza Pub on Niagara Street. Those have been fun, and I'm hoping to have even more fun. I haven't seen a lot of, people our age and my friends and listeners of the podcast and the Buffalo sports community hadn't really come out to the first two events that we've had. But I'm hoping this last one, being at Sports City, being a Wednesday night, maybe that matters a little bit more. And some NBA games, that season gets started next week. And hopefully we can get some of our listeners, some of our friends, some of our colleagues in the Buffalo sports media out there. Sal Capaccio is going to be there. I think Bulldog from WGR 55 is going to be there. And I think Tim Graham's going to be there.
I am going to be there unless the Bills pull off another trade, which is why I was unable to attend this past Tuesday when you were the celebrity bartender at New York Beer Project in Lockport. I was ready to go, looking forward to hanging out and helping you raise some money. And then not just the Amari Cooper trade, but the report from Sportico, which is something that I'd been working on for a little while and couldn't really report because I didn't have the details of it. But Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, and Josie Altidore, three athletes with Toronto ties, looking to buy a piece of the Bills as part of a group. I don't think they have the kind of money that they can, even though they made hundreds of millions as athletes, I don't know that they have the wherewithal to just throw some cash, and it's got to be, and that's what it is too. I mean, you don't put it on your credit card, and you can't pay for it in a barter system with property or homes or your classic car collection. So you have to have money, fluidity, and I don't know that these guys, despite their wealth as athletes, can buy a large enough chunk on their own. There's somebody with deeper pockets also involved in that group, but that all happened on Tuesday, and I was unable to attend. So my apologies for that. But you'll get your money. You'll get money out of me.
All right. Well, you were missed, and maybe we can even get you behind the bar slinging a couple beers.
Yeah. Celebrity, well, again, celebrity bartending, finger quotes, right? You or me being considered a celebrity. I did one with Jerry Sullivan one time up in Lewiston, and I thought it was going to be easy, and it's not, especially when you have people ordering drinks that aren't just draft beer. I can do draft beers all day and pour wine and all that type of stuff, but when people start ordering martinis and Tom Collinses and whatever else trendy drinks people are having these days, yeah, it was not easy.
Yeah,
It's
and
a little stressful, and you're behind somebody else's bar. This is somebody else's workstation, and you don't know where everything is. You don't want to mess it up. Yeah, it's not as simple as just getting behind the bar and jerking suds.
no, and in these events that I've done, I don't know about yours, the real bartenders are working as well.
And you're
And
getting in their way.
you're in their way. There's not a lot of space behind these bars, and it takes a lot of fancy footwork, and you're kind of like Le'Veon Bell looking for the openings and stopping and starting to know how to navigate behind that bar and not spill the drinks and not bump into people walking around with food. And these professional bartenders just know it. It's like they have the sixth sense for how to move and stay out of each other's way. But just an average Joe like me stepping behind the bar, there's a lot of missteps and a lot of fumbling and a lot of bumping. And I'm checking my watch kind of towards the end, just kind of waiting to get behind the other side of the bar and just sit there and receive the drinks instead of handing them out.
Well, give the information again. Sports City on Niagara Street. That's what day and time?
Sports City Pizza Pub on Niagara Street, 6 o'clock on Wednesday night, Wednesday, the 23rd of October, when we start that.
And where can people donate if they have the ability to maybe Venmo, PayPal, or whatever it is to your dedicated receptacle?
There's an online page. I mean, the link's a little bit long and complicated, but it's linked to my social media pages. LeBronstein on Twitter, LeBronstein23 on Instagram, if you're able to find that. And maybe we could even pop the link into the comments on the YouTube page or the description on the YouTube page. But if you see me anywhere, I'm not wearing it right now, but I have a wristband that you can donate through that. Or if you happen to find me online, and I'm posting that link as often as I can. So that would be the best way. Find me in real life, find me online, and I can direct you to the link and we can get that out there.
Men Wear Pink, a great cause to help out the American Cancer Society.
Now, what do you think after this month is over, the campaign's over? I still have all of these pink shirts and these pink socks and these pink outfits. How much pink should I be continuing in the wardrobe going forward through the winter?
Yeah, you need to, I don't know. I mean, you can't wear it all the time, right? It's too notice. It's not like it's navy green or navy green, navy blue or Kelly green or other types of things that you can wear over and over again and nobody notices. Say I have this bright orange golf polo that I wear on occasion, and every time I wear it, I get a bunch of comments about how loud it is. I can't wear that shirt more than maybe once or twice a summer.
Yeah, and you have to be calculated by it. You have to know why you're wearing the color. People are going to ask you about it, and you have to have some sort of explanation or line or
Yeah, you have
reason
to know who
behind
your
it.
audience is going to be. Uh, Absolutely. People ask me if I just got off my shift at the Home Depot or doing interstate construction, whatever.
I like a little bit about it because I think you're like me in this regard. When you cover sporting events, you don't want to wear the colors of the home team, but you also don't want to wear the colors of the visiting team. There aren't too many professional sports teams. I really can't think of any that have pink as their primary color. So I could kind of use this as a neutral sporting event color.
Yeah, so everybody in press boxes will just get used to you always wearing pink. You'll be like Charlie Brown wearing the same shirt as far as those people in the press box are concerned because you're just going to go for pink for work. Yeah, or Homer Simpson, Peter Griffin, any cartoon character really, they always wear the same clothes, right? That's what you'll be.
Yeah, Mr. Pink, like Reservoir Dogs.
Right? Are you going to wear pink? Then you will be wearing pink when you're in the press box Sunday at 1 o'clock for Titans at Bills. It's interesting times with the Bills, and of course they always would be, no matter what. But here they are at 4-2, and atop the AFC East comfortably. It would seem they already have a victory over Miami. They have a victory over New York. Um, that New York Jets game, though, could have gone either way. And Greg Zuerlein doesn't clang a couple of field goals off the left upright, field goal attempts, I should say. They weren't field goals because he didn't make them. And the Bills would be in second place in the AFC East just that quickly because they'd be at 3-3 with the Jets, and the Jets have the tiebreaker. So, Joan, I don't know what's your take on the Bills and this landscape. And we'll get into the Amari Cooper trade in particular, but the Bills at 4-2 here with a home game finally after three straight on the road, a team that they should beat. Hopefully they're not looking past them, right? If you're a Bills fan, you don't want the Bills to be taking a deep breath and feeling good about being at home for the first time in a month. And you have a weak AFC South opponent that's won only one game, and Will Levis leads the NFL in interceptions, and he's also hurt. And yeah, this is a game that the Bills should roll. The floor is yours.
Well, they've gotten through what's probably the toughest stretch of their schedule. You never really know. The schedules kind of evolve and these situations are fluid, but the 3 game road trip, and it's still part of it because it's 4 road games in 5 weeks, but 3 road games against pretty good teams. And even though the Bills lost 2 of those 3 games, I think from the Bills fan perspective, it's pretty optimistic because they've won the most recent game, because they beat the Jets, the division opponent, and Miami's season is falling apart and New England's not a threat, and the Bills have a comfortable lead now on the Jets, so they're in really good shape division wise and potential for a home playoff game. 4-2 is not a bad record for the Bills to have right now when they've played that many road games and some of the tougher games on their schedule already. It was from the time they released the schedule, it looked like a difficult schedule early in the season that gets easier as the year goes along. And the Amari Cooper trade kind of changes the whole feeling about the team. The biggest weakness has been addressed. And I don't know if Amari Cooper is going to be the Pro Bowl caliber, 1,000-yard receiver star that he's been on other teams, but he's probably going to be, when he gets up to speed, the best receiver on the team, fill an important need and make the other receivers better. And on top of that, the Bills are getting healthier. Other than Matt Milano and the long-term injuries, a lot of the short-term injuries and the players that have been out of the lineup seem like they're coming back or close to coming back, and they're getting a lot closer to having a full roster and don't have players out for the season quite yet, key players, which, last year they did. And earlier in the season, it seemed like they were trending towards being a depleted team as the season went along.
Historically, wide receiver trades within the season don't work. It's hard for a receiver to get incorporated into an offense. It's something that I asked Brandon Beane about at his news conference on Wednesday. And he agreed with that sentiment wholeheartedly, that it's maybe the hardest position to get somebody going on the fly. The onboarding process, you hear about it all off season, right? Building chemistry, the symbiosis of the quarterback and the receiver. Mac Hollins doesn't seem like he has any chemistry with Josh Allen, and they've been together for months. So here you have Amari Cooper coming in, and I wanted to take a look at that. So I looked into the history of in-season trades, and I wanted to talk to some coaches who saw both sides of it. And so for The Athletic this week, I wrote a story in which I spoke with Ray Sherman, the legendary and longtime receivers coach who coached Jerry Rice and John Taylor back with the San Francisco 49ers, Randy Moss, a bunch of superstars, Hall of Famers. Ray Sherman was the Cowboys receivers coach when they traded for Roy Williams from the Detroit Lions in 2008. It's considered the greatest bust trade of any kind, not in season, out of season, anything. The worst trade in Dallas Cowboys history. But I also talked with the guy who was the offensive coordinator for the greatest in-season wide receiver trade, at least in modern NFL. That player was Amari Cooper, and it was with the Dallas Cowboys, not at the same time. It was in 2018. Amari Cooper was traded to the Cowboys from the Raiders and was sensational. And he changed the offense from Ezekiel Elliott and nothing else, because there was nothing for Dak Prescott to do other than hand it off to Ezekiel Elliott or throw to a young Cole Beasley. They didn't have Des Bryant. They didn't have Jason Witten. And they were searching. They were in trouble, and they went out and got Amari Cooper, and he changed things. Daisy Graham wants to be heard here on the podcast. I don't know if she's coming through, but she had a rough day at the vet today, Jonah. She's been scarred. But so yeah, that Scott Linehan was the offensive coordinator of the Cowboys that year. So I talked to Scott Linehan, talked to Ray Sherman, and they both think that Amari Cooper is going to be exactly what the Bills needed. They think he's going to be a terrific infusion, that he is going to open up things for Josh Allen. It's going to make the run game better. And the other thing that I want to point out in talking not only to those two guys, but other people who I trust and who've been paying attention, that he has not been going through the motions in Cleveland this year, which would be very easy to do. Everything that's going wrong with the Browns and Deshaun Watson and being miserable. This isn't a Devontae Adams situation. He didn't ask to be traded. He didn't ask out. And then if you go back and look at the film, he's busting his ass on every play, even though he's got 9 drops. That's a red flag, but he's busting his ass. He's an elite player at receiver. He's 30. Okay. So maybe there's a problem there in terms of just mileage being and yeah, 2018 was 6 years ago when he transformed Dallas's offense from a team that was 2 games out of first place in the NFC East to winning the division and winning a playoff game. So those are just my general thoughts on Amari Cooper and the impact that I think he's going to have, or at least experts who know about these things believe he's going to have. Maybe not this week, though. Short week. He comes in, doesn't even get into the building until Tuesday night, and then practicing on Wednesday. He's got to learn the offense in a short period of time, and maybe they'll have some packages for him to go on third down, in the red zone, specific situations. So maybe not Sunday. Don't get your hopes up necessarily for that, but people who I trust and who know their stuff tell me that Amari Cooper's got enough left in the tank, that he's of the right mind. He played through a lot of bullshit in Cleveland, and this could be a perfect meshing of a guy who's eager to finally play with a good quarterback again, and a team that desperately needs what he has to offer, which is separation, route running, contested catches, all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think maybe the best thing about Amari Cooper and his fit on the Bills is that I don't think he's going to be a disruptive personality, that he can give them If not number one receiver production, number one receiver type play and route running and reliability at that spot, but not
And
demand.
attention. The defense has to pay attention to him. They can't just even they can't be like a cynical fan and say, "Oh, this guy's not gonna. It's not gonna help. He's 30. He's not. He still is a 12 to 1400 yard a season caliber type player."
Yeah, but he's not an attention-seeking receiver like the Bills' previous number one receiver
Right.
was. He's
Or
not going to
Devontae
be.
Adams, or like I had mentioned, he did not want out of Cleveland, or I'm sure he did, but it wasn't like he demanded a trade and was pretending to have a hamstring injury or plantar fasciitis or migraines. He was still playing through the whistle.
He's not going to be showing up Josh Allen on the sidelines. We don't think he's not going to be demanding a high number of targets, even though he is a receiver that has produced, well over 1,000 yards in the season. I don't think he's going to come in here feeling like he has to, although it is a contract year, and probably he does want to put up enough numbers to get a nice new contract in the offseason. And if his role is mainly to, or if his role evolves into just being a number one receiver on the field that opens things up for other receivers, I don't think you're going to see a lot of frustration from him if his statistics don't match what his talent brings to the table. And the Bills there's not a lot of a financial investment with the salary cap figure for this year or any salary cap numbers next year. And they did give up a 3rd round pick, but that's less than they got back for Stephon Diggs. And on balance, if you kind of cross-reference the two different trades, the Bills maybe come out slightly ahead in the asset accumulation game that way. I think I wouldn't expect too much out of him, but I think that what he is going to give in small doses can really be valuable for the Bills.
Yeah, you raise a great point with the money. This, unlike Devontae Adams, which was going to be a huge financial commitment, this is almost nothing. In fact, I don't know exactly what the Bills save during Von Miller's suspension, but that has to account for most of it. He reworked his contract. He had a base salary. I'm talking about Amari Cooper here, a base salary of about $880,000 or something like that, which is prorated. Divide that by 18, multiply it by 5 games already, and that's what the Browns have paid him. So the Bills are on the hook for only I don't know what it is, $600,000 or whatever it is. I don't have the math in front of me. I wish I had my notepad. I did work it out.
It's like
But
839 or something like that is the cap figure.
I think it's even lower than that, isn't it?
I don't know. That's the number that I believe I saw and I wrote in my story.
Well, I think his base salary in Cleveland was that.
Yeah, so maybe, right.
And
No,
then Cleveland paid it.
Prorated. Yeah, okay.
And then Cleveland paid a chunk of it already. All right, I'll try to figure it out here before we get off, so that way anybody listening here is wondering what the hell we're trying to decipher. We can at least give you some sort of answer.
Well, but it's such a small number that it barely matters. But with as large as the salary cap is, we're talking differences of $100,000 is a small percentage of the salary cap. It's it's a very it's a contract that barely registers on the salary cap. It's almost like getting him for free for as little bit as they have to pay him in cap dollars.
Okay, I was off. You were correct, Jonah. His base salary for this year, 1.21 million, and then the Bills are responsible for 800,000 and change.
That's great. I don't have to go edit my story now.
I thought the base salary was what the Bills owe. Still, yeah, a pittance for a player of that skill set.
Yeah. $839,000. That's like barely what you and I make.
I know you could afford 2 Tim Grahams and 3 Jonah Bronsteins for that money.
You could buy the Buffalo News for that money.
The Bills opened as 6.5-point favorites, Jonah. They are now up to 9.5 in some places. Sucker bet. What would you do if you had to bet this game? Would you give the 9.5 or take the 9.5?
I don't like giving 9.5 points in an NFL game to anybody, but we think about the last time we saw the Bills on their home field. I don't know if Tennessee's much better than Jacksonville. Maybe they're in a better state, and they're probably not. I think
Tennessee is much better than Florida.
I think that the Bills are going to play well and score points and come out and be one of the better versions of themselves and have a chance at winning this game by a big number. But in general, in the NFL, I wouldn't want to take a big number like that for any team.
What number are you putting for the over-under of Sabres wins this year, Jonah? They are 1-4-1 through 6 games. They are giving up 4 goals a game, which, especially the last couple of games, leaving a taste in your mouth. You would think that they rank worse in goals per game against, but they actually are 7th worst, tied for 7th worst in the NHL. There are some other teams that have been worse. But the Sabres, because they've played a couple extra games than most teams, have given up the most goals in the league. I've been out there. You're out there a lot, both games and practice. But the Lindy vibe doesn't seem to be sticking.
Yeah, and even though they're not last in the league, the 4 goals against average, if that holds up over a whole season, would be the worst in Sabres history and a full goal more than any team that Lindy Ruff coached previously. And the game has changed a little bit. I mean, it's not as low scoring of a league as it was when Lindy Ruff was at the coach and in his best seasons that the Sabres had. But, I thought that the Sabres were going to make the playoffs and have a winning record and be a competitive team this year. And there's some signs that that still could happen, but they've gotten off to a poor start. You think about some of these most recent seasons under Don Granato, they've gotten off to a good start and still missed the playoffs, still went through losing streaks later in the season. So now they're further behind the 8 ball, and the pace, the playoff point pace is not good for the Sabres. I think they'll turn it around in some ways, and it won't be a long slog and it won't be a last place season like it's looking like so far. But unfortunately, I don't know if there's a lot of Sabres fans that feel that way after watching these past 2 losses on TV, some of the ways that they've lost these last 2 games. And I think that's the depressing part, is the hopelessness that even with Lindy Ruff coming in, that seemed like the move, even back a year ago, that seemed like the type of coach the Sabres need. The forwards that they added on the bottom 2 lines, that seemed like the type of moves the Sabres needed to make a year ago. And now they made those moves. They have these young, dynamic, high-scoring players that are finally coming into their own age-wise, and you thought that was going to take a next step. It seems like they have
new scoreboard, new roof.
Right. New vibes, new goaltending, or not new goaltending, but it seems like they have the goaltending position figured out, and they were supposed to be better, and they're not better. They're giving up 2 goals in the first period. They can't score on the power play. They're losing in a lot of the same ways that they lost under the previous coach, with the previous captains, and with the same flaws carried over with a different leadership group. And that's frustrating, and it's got to be depressing for Sabres fans, because it feels like nothing can be done with it short of blowing it all up. And they've already done that. They've already blown up the whole team and tanked and tried to get a number 1 pick and fix the team that way. And I think you're running out of answers and what ifs and how this team can possibly get out of this drought, because they've tried all the different avenues and none of them have worked so far.
You talked about the leadership, and I don't know that I was triggered as much as our good friend Pat Moran and his Talking Buffalo podcast was last night when he heard Rasmus Dahlin talk about not being hungry enough. I don't know if you saw that clip. I retweeted it. But
I heard
Pat was upset, and Pat was right to be upset. Pat, I when I heard it, I was like, meh. But then Pat talking about it, I was like, you're right. I mean, he's the captain. And I know it's 6 games in, and those are things that we've heard Michael Pekka say. I think we've heard Danny Briere and Chris Drury say those things at times, and that's okay. Pat was going to have a stroke, I think, at some point, but yeah, that is a red flag. What's with these guys? It's been forever since they've made the playoffs. So they know what this fan base wants, and they're hungry. They haven't experienced the fan base because, like we know Sabres fans can be, the electricity in that arena when that team is good. This organization hasn't experienced it. Nobody on this roster has experienced it. Lindy has experienced it, but how can he convey that? It's tough to do. If you have a team where your best players feel like they're going through the motions, then how far removed are we really from Ryan O'Reilly saying that the joy of the game was gone, was lost, and all the things that people were pissed off that Ryan O'Reilly would say, to the point where he had to be traded right freaking now. That's what Rasmus Dahlin, 6 games into this season, is starting to say.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with what Rasmus Dahlin said, and especially, if he's being honest and genuine, and that is really what he thinks about the team, and if he's calling out his teammates in a little bit of a way, I think that's good for a captain. The problem is that they played that way and that they, weren't hungry. I mean, not
Right.
so much that
Oh, I
Rasmus
don't. Yeah, like
Dahlin
I
is
said, I don't
pointing
mind that
that
he called
out.
him out. It's just that we're in this state already, 6 games in.
Yeah, I mean, and not to make any excuses for him, it was the second night of a road back-to-back. They're traveling from Pittsburgh to Columbus, and that shouldn't, that isn't an excuse, but it can maybe affect your legs in the first period and the way they played in that game. Lindy Ruff tried to push a button by scratching Jack Quinn, who has the lowest plus minus on the team, and that's something that Sabres fans were asking, not specifically with Jack Quinn, but Don Granato was reluctant to pull the top players out of the lineup and send a message and things like that. And Lindy Ruff tried to do that. It didn't have much of an effect. I mean, the Sabres did score 4 goals last night and 5 goals the night before, and all these goals are happening at a 5-on-5. Their analytics aren't as bad as their record is. There's some reasons to think that they're going to get hot a little bit and even out the record in some ways, maybe, but they're not
Seth
winning games.
Appert's power play is 0 for 18.
Right. And so, yeah, what team could possibly win games without ever scoring on the power play? And not just not getting those power play goals, but how much is this getting into the team's head and deflating their confidence and belief? And it's almost, I think the fans feel this way, and I don't know if the players are quite there yet, but it probably could creep up on them. The whistle blows and they call a penalty on the other team, and it's almost like, we don't want it. We would rather just keep skating up and down playing 5-on-5, because the power play seems to negate our powers, and they get out of their game and they don't play as well. They have a shorthanded goal this year, and one of the best plays of the season, Alex Tuch stripping the puck and going in and scoring on a breakaway, knocking in his own rebound. They can't seem to find those opportunities with an extra man on the ice. It's frustrating to watch, and it's got to be even more frustrating for them to be a part of it.
They played really well in that win. I was at that game. It's the only game I've been able to get to this year, but it was against the defending champions also. So it wasn't a gimme. That wasn't like they were playing the Syracuse Crunch. They played well in that game. And they, like you say, they're scoring goals at 5-on-5, which is encouraging. The defense has just been abysmal. Decisions, dumb penalties. Yeah, they've gotten some bad calls against them too. I get it, but it is only 6 games, but 6 games is enough to sink your season. A 6-game stretch. I mean, it's, again, we lived it with different coaches in the past, where they get good at the end of the season, and you're looking back on a really bad slump earlier in the season and saying, hell, if they were able to even just get some points out of these games, then they got a shot at the playoffs.
And they're beyond the point where they might have been a few years back, where if they happen to finish 9th and just a couple points out, that it's progress towards eventually making the playoffs. The fan base and the community and even the organization, maybe even ownership, is not going to tolerate that again. It's make the playoffs or bust. I mean, I don't know if they're going to make a coaching change if they don't make the playoffs, but maybe a management change and probably roster changes. They can't keep coming up short. They have to make that jump into the playoffs, or it's going to be a failed season no matter what. But I guess the good news is the playoffs don't start till April, and they have some time to turn it around and get on the winning side of things, but also get the fans back behind them and get some confidence, both internal confidence and confidence from people following the team.
It'll be an interesting line for Lindy Ruff to navigate, because he's probably going to have to get after these guys pretty heavily to expedite this transition from Granato to the Lindy Ruff way. Nice guy coach versus a little bit more of not even a little bit more, a disciplinarian. Granted, he's mellowed over the years because he's had to. The NHL has forced him to do that. The players have more power than they did when Lindy was at his best 20 years ago. And you can't just scratch guys, send them to the minors. You can't, there's all kinds of things that coaches used to be able to do that they just can't anymore, or you'll lose the room. And so it'll be interesting. He does have leverage. I mean, everybody on that roster knows that Lindy Ruff is the man. And if they didn't know it before the home opener, they did when they heard the crowd give him the loudest cheer of anybody that was introduced before that game, more than any player. And the players should have noticed, if they didn't, that this guy's not going anywhere for a while. I don't, sure. Terry Pagula could just get a crosshair up his ass one day and decide to fire everybody. He's fired people on a whim before, especially with the hockey team. So no, but I think that Lindy Ruff has the leverage. And so it's going to, at some point, I think it's going to have to be a my way or the highway type mentality with Lindy. And will the players push back on that? Will they totally adopt it? Will they totally go along? I think he's going to, seems like he's going to have to maybe have a heavier hand to get things where he wants them to go quicker. And that to me is going to be the fascinating thing.
We do have some breaking news on the Sabres.
The Scott Ratzlaff signing?
Yeah, they've signed a 19-year-old goalie
to a 3-year contract. So yeah, entry-level deal for Scott Ratzlaff. That alert did come in while we were talking here.
I wonder with the Sabres, and it has nothing to do with this signing, but it does kind of lead into this point. They're again the youngest team in the league, and by average age, they're even younger than they were last year. A lot of the players are older. They're maybe a little bit more of an experienced team in some ways, but they're lacking. They only have one player over 30. They're lacking the veteran leadership, and I just don't know if that's the reason why they can't seem to get over this hump, that they're continually a young, developing team year after year, even if these players have moved on from being young, developing players. Their captains are younger than they were before. It's been an excuse for them in the past years, but I mean, is that their fatal flaw, that they continue to be the youngest team in the league and just not a team that's ready to contend because not enough of these players are in their prime years yet?
That's a great question. One of their youngest players, we talked about it afterwards. I don't know how many people picked up on it. I wasn't writing about the game, so I didn't write about it at The Athletic. I didn't tweet about it either. But after that game against the Florida Panthers, in which Lindy Ruff dressed only 11 forwards, he went with the extra defenseman that night. He was going to roll 3 lines, and people were wondering, well, what happened to Zach Benson? Peyton Krebs, who was going to be one of the spare parts on that 2-man fourth line that might get in there for just a couple of minutes, replaced Zach Benson on the top line that night. And Lindy Ruff went out of his way unsolicited to say, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, he's not injured. He's not still injured, Zach Benson, but I just don't feel like I'm getting 100%. I just don't feel like he is 100%. And that was a shot across the bow to the kid of, hey man, I don't like the way you're playing the game. Maybe you're not bringing it the way you should be. And he also made, again, emphasizing that he said he's not injured. He's still not injured. That was Lindy Ruff saying this guy should be better than he is. And it was just the classic Lindy Ruff that I covered 20 years ago, 15 years ago, of starting to push the buttons on this young team. And I'm sure Zach Benson, if you saw it on MSG or on stream, or I don't know if the players pay attention to the coach's post-game news conference, but this was Lindy Ruff saying it out loud in public that Zach Benson's not giving him his best. And that to me was refreshing. That was like, this is why Lindy Ruff was brought in. This is the guy, and here it is. And I don't think, of course, the Sabres won that game. There were so many other things to write about. Rob Ray was announced that he's going into the Sabres Hall of Fame that night. So we had a lot of things that we could have written about. But to me, the thing that stood out was that reference about Zach Benson. And I was like, all right, it's official. Lindy's back.
Yeah, and you wonder if Lindy Ruff was the coach of the team last year, I don't know if Zach Benson is on this NHL roster now. If Zach Benson doesn't have that great training camp and make the club as an 18-year-old with some injuries helping him along in that, point in time, and he doesn't play a full season in the NHL last year, he gets sent back to junior. Now this year's his rookie year. He's probably starting out in the AHL. And I don't know if that's better or worse for Zach Benson and the Sabres' long-term prospects, but if things go a little bit differently a year ago, they probably don't have this 19-year-old forward in the top 6 on opening night this year. And maybe Lindy Ruff, with his experience and his desire to win now, isn't as comfortable with having such a young player in such an important role.
Another new coach in Buffalo, Pete Lembo, he's doing things. UB is 4-2 heading into their homecoming game Saturday against Western Michigan. Linebacker Sean Dolak is a midseason All-American. That's an unofficial thing, but people start doling out these midseason awards, and Dolak is racking up tackles like nobody's business. Jonah, you're out there. I mean, I'm a total observer when it comes to UB football. Whereas with the Sabres and the Bills, I'm talking to people in the building. I'm going to the games. I'm in the locker room. I have my sources and I have my connections. I don't with UB. So by all means, tell us about UB. And this is a team that looks like they might be headed to a bowl.
Well, yeah, they're well on pace for that. 4-2 at midseason. You only need 6 wins to be bowl eligible, and they seem like they're trending towards at least that many. 2-0 in the MAC, and they've beaten probably 2 of the better teams in the MAC, and definitely at the time they played them, Northern Illinois was number 23 in the country and had just beaten Notre Dame, and Toledo, who they just beat. And Toledo's been, over a period of time, the best team in the MAC over the last 15 years, and even last year and the year before. They had beaten Mississippi State earlier in the year and were 10.5-point favorites, and UB was coming off a really bad loss at UConn, but they had a bye week. They reformulated some things. They came out in an inverted wishbone running attack on the second drive that Toledo probably wasn't ready for, and it seemed like they weren't ready for, and that got UB a lead, and they ran the ball effectively throughout the game. They've struggled at times to pass the ball with quarterback CJ Agbana, but he's a good runner, and they figured out ways to use him as a runner and then opened up some play action passes down the field. You're really seeing the value of good coaching, and this is a well-coached team, and he's probably coached them to maybe a win or two more than you would have expected or that the talent on the roster suggested. And this is, they haven't been 4-2 very many times. I think it's 4 times in their Division I history, and they haven't been 2-0 and leading the MAC very many times. And the times that they have, those have been their best years. Their MAC championship season in 2008, their 10-win season in 2018. And none of the previous coaches, unless you go back into the 40s, have done as well in their first season as Pete Lembo has. And this isn't a situation where it came into a ready-made roster. This team was 3-9 last year. They lost players in the transfer portal. This was supposed to be a bit of a struggle rebuilding this team back up. And they're as good as they've been in any of their previous years, in a year when, just looking at them on paper, nobody really thought. I think they were picked 9th or 10th in the preseason conference poll.
And locally, Joan, I think it was a total athletics department type vibe of UB and their basketball program and what they had to do when they pulled the plug, and they're hitting the restart button. And I think that seeing what happened with UB basketball, I think there are a lot of people who just assumed that, all right, well, here's football's turn with their new coach and losing all their better players.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody expected that they were going to be that bad in football. And I think Pete Lembo's experience and having coached in the league before.
I think people were just prepared for it, though. Like, it was like, all right, now it's time for football. They're like, we'll start worrying about football in 2025.
Yeah. But I think, and even just talking to people on the sidelines at practices that have been around UB football for a long time and tend to have positive feelings about the team and are never really that down on what's happening, even those type of people were thinking this is going to be a team that is well coached and competitive and maybe doesn't lose leads late and blow as many games as they did last year. But even those type of people were thinking, hey, best case scenario, maybe we get to 6 wins with this coaching. It was just thought to be a bit of a reset year recruiting wise, because he was hired a little bit late, lost players in the transfer portal, didn't get a lot of replacement players in the transfer portal. There was some optimism that he could coach up this team to not be bad, not be at the bottom of the league. But I don't think anybody expected them to be, leading the MAC halfway through the season, and especially the way the schedule was set up, playing some of the better teams in the MAC. I think people thought maybe they'd be better in the second half of the season than they were in the first half of the season. Now it shapes up. Western Michigan is also top half of the MAC type team, but the teams they play coming up, Akron and Kent State, those are not the better teams in the MAC. So if UB, especially if they win this next game, they're in really good shape to keep winning and have, beyond being bowl eligible, be contending for the MAC championship and, able to put in a nice 8-9 win season if they keep it going, if they stay healthy and they keep playing well.
What's the, do you know what the spread is for Western Michigan?
I think I saw Western Michigan is favored by a point on
Oh.
UB's home field. So that indicates that Western Michigan is considered a better team, but UB was 10.5-point underdogs last week and they won that game by 15.
You mentioned Mississippi State earlier regarding college football. Mississippi State is getting a Western New Yorker for the women's basketball program. Madison Francis committed. Again, I don't follow the high schools that closely. This was in the A block of the local news. Channel 2 sent a news reporter out to cover Madison Francis, declaring that where she was going to go to school. That's how big that is. To you, Jonah, you have the perspective of the history of high school sports here and who goes where and how does this rank in terms of signings for a local high school basketball player?
Well, we've seen local basketball players sign with Power 5 teams and maybe even higher level Power 5 teams. Amari Cooper signed with UConn. You really don't get any bigger than that. That was, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe. Roddy Gale signed with Ohio State a few years back and has since transferred to Michigan. Not to say Mississippi State isn't a Power 5 team, but it isn't a level above some of these other things. There's about a half dozen women's basketball players from Western New York colleges playing at Power 5 programs right now. Some of them transferred into those teams through their college careers. Gretchen Dolan signed with Illinois not that long ago. But Madison Francis, I think she's the best girls basketball player I've seen in Western New York. Certainly more athletic than Amari DeBerry, not as tall, but her speed and jumping ability. She's probably a Division I volleyball player if she wanted to do that, and a Division I track athlete if she wanted to do that. The way she moves around on the court and can do a variety of different things, and still has a senior year here to watch. I think she's the best girls basketball player we've had. If she's not the best recruit, but she might be the best recruit. She's a top 40 4-star caliber player. She's been offered by a whole list of schools. She maybe could have signed with someone who's ranked higher or was in the top 25 last year, which Mississippi State was not. But
do you know the other offers or what she was considering?
I believe, there's been a lot of them. Last time I talked to her, she was a little coy about what they are. She got a lot of offers early on. And if you follow recruiting, you know that offers that come in as a freshman or a sophomore don't always stick. But she could have picked most any school. I don't know if UConn and some of the Stanford and some of the very top programs came in, but I know North Carolina, Maryland, schools like that were in the mix. I think SEC, ACC level, she had a large list of offers to pick from.
Yeah. And I don't know that I mentioned it, but she's at Lancaster High School.
Well, right. And that's another thing I like about her story and her game is that she didn't go to a prep school. She didn't feel the need to leave the area to get more exposure. She does play for a more out-of-town national AAU program, and I think that played a role in some of her recruiting. But she didn't even go to one of the top private schools. She didn't go to O'Hara or Nichols during the past year. She was able to stay at Lancaster, win sectional titles with her classmates, stay at the same school, play volleyball, and run track, which might not have been quite as possible at some of the private schools. Definitely wouldn't have been the case at going off to a basketball-only prep school, and still able to get that Power 5 scholarship. And probably, I don't know any of the details on this, but probably is going to be in, an NIL program with Mississippi State and have a real fruitful college career, both on the floor and, in some of the financial implications that could happen. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and predict that she's going to be a WNBA player, but I think she has that kind of potential and that kind of athletic ability that she really is going to probably be a professional basketball player in some league and might develop into a WNBA player at Mississippi State.
Any other recruiting notes, Jonah? We don't talk about high schools probably as much as we should, but since we're on the topic, anything else going on with the local high schools, whether it be recruiting or big matchups this weekend?
Well, I'm trying to
Sorry
run
to
through
put you
some
on the
football.
spot.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about football recruiting because that would be the quickest to come up. And my first thought when you asked me that question was boys men's basketball, where West New York's in a bit of a drought. There haven't been too many Division I players. Jaden Harrison, who was the all-time leading scorer, set that record last year, and the top player in West New York last year, walked on at Arkansas State, but didn't last much longer through the summer and is now playing Division II basketball at Anderson College in North Carolina. Yeah, you did put me on the spot, and I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, I do think football-wise, there's more scholarships and there's more opportunities, but even in football, the best players tend to be FCS level coming out of Western New York these days.
What game are you covering tonight?
I think I'm going to go out to see our friend Joe Licata at Williamsville South. They play Pioneer, which is one of the best small schools in Western New York. They're number 2 in the small school poll. Williamsville South is a bigger school than Pioneer, but they're also in a small school classification. So that's an interesting matchup, even though Pioneer has a better record and might be a better team. But, Williamsville South tends to be a bigger program than Pioneer. So this is a big test for Pioneer. And, I'd like to see Joe's team, and they're doing a pink event. So I feel like that's, a good place for me to go wear some of my pink clothing.
You got to get it out of your system. You're not going to be, like we talked about earlier in the show, you're not going to be able to wear it every day anymore.
Right.
I guess
Yeah.
you could. Again, we are, but you're not gonna.
Well, and I almost feel like a little bit like a Instagram influencer now. I'm going to events thinking, where can I get a nice picture to post on my story that's going to get some likes and maybe, go viral and help me get some donations.
Did you reach out to Jackie Walker? Was that set up for you, or was that you working your connections?
I talked to Jackie Walker. It was a little bit my idea, but she was very gracious about it. Jackie Walker was doing that Mammothon at Roswell Park. There was a WIVB Channel 4 sponsored event. The station is very involved in that. And I asked if I could come along, introduce my sister, and my mom came too, to Jackie Walker. And then she offered to, record that video, and it came out really nice. It was a great weather day, and we were up on that balcony canopy at Roswell Park, and it worked out really well for myself. And I think Jackie Walker enjoyed being able to do that, and we got to promote the Mammothon a little bit. And so it was my idea, but it all worked out well. And then Jackie Walker was a little bit of the creative director once we got the ball rolling.
It was good to have her there, I'm sure.
Jackie
that
Walker's
purpose.
husband, Mike Beato, was the photographer, and he's a key cog in these type of things. And, Jackie Walker's been writing some really nice digital articles for WIVB.com and with some, maybe uncredited photography from Mike that's come out very well. And, I kind of wish I had my own in-house photographer doing that for me.
Hey, and one more reminder, check out Jonah behind the bar at Sports City on Niagara Street. That's Wednesday at 6.
6 o'clock we get
6
started.
o'clock.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll be out there.
Yeah, basket
Unless the Bills
raffles.
do something that force me to stay away, but
Yeah, some cool prizes you might be able to win in the raffles. And this one, I think, will be a much more sport fan oriented, maybe not much more, but more of a sport fan oriented event than the last 2 have been.
maybe I'll dig something out of my collection you can to raffle off or to auction.
I think we're going to send you around. You're going to be the one with the hat, just guilting people into entering the 50-50 all night long.
All right, I'll do it. Put me to work. All right, Jonah, thanks for doing this. Thanks for doing your campaign. Thanks for being a good dude. And thanks to everybody out there for listening or watching Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, like, do all the things. It helps us out. It lets us know that you're out there, and it lets all the different platforms know that you're out there. And yeah, Jonah?
Well, I should have brought this up earlier. I hope he's still listening, but I did want to shout out one listener, Craig McVitie, who did make a donation, did indicate that he heard us talk about it on the podcast and said he's a TGAF listener. And hopefully we can get a few more, and I'll be sure to shout you out on a future podcast if that shows up and you let me know that, you listen to TGAF and that you got wind of this Men Wear Pink campaign from listening to our podcast.
Yeah, and check the linkage, whether it be, I'm going to post the link in a bunch of different places. So if you, however you got to this podcast, maybe you didn't through Twitter or whatever, I'm going to put it underneath the tweet. I'm going to put it in the comment on YouTube. Jonah, if you want to retweet it out, but the link to donate specifically to Jonah's bucket. Let's see if we can get Jonah back up the leaderboard. Fourth place is no good. Fourth place is no good. We got to do better than that.
I'd like to do better than that, but Final Four,
I don't like it. No, it's got top two. Top two is only is acceptable. That's it.
well,
All right. Thanks.
We're doing a lot better than John Scott, who, as hard as he's working, might need to work a little harder because he's in 13th place.
Do we know anybody that we can make fun of that's even lower than that?
There's people that are lower, but it isn't really anybody we know that we can make fun of.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately.
We'll work on that. Jonah, thanks. Thanks to everybody out there for supporting Jonah, for supporting this podcast. Catch you next one.
CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.